Hello, welcome to UATV. I'm Christopher Atwood. This week marks the 3-year anniversary of the Euromaidan Revolution, or Revolution of Dignity. The events of 2014 were met with applause from the West and with a military invasion from Russia. Joining us to discuss the media aspect of the ensuing conflict is Alya Shandra, managing editor of NGO media outlet Euromaidan Press. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
First, I want to get your reflections on the media landscape during Euromaidan in 2013-2014 and how things have evolved since then.
Well, one of the reasons that we started operating in 2014 was actually a lack of English language media from the Ukrainian perspective on events in Ukraine. And in the situation where many Western outlets were taking their information directly from Russian media, which had their offices in Moscow, and were replicating basically the Russian take on the events, we started translating news of different outlets. Of course, the situation has changed since that time. Many Ukrainian outlets have had their translations, good quality translations, opened up. Other new media outlets have emerged, like UA, like your TV channel. And unfortunately, others have closed, like UA Today. But anyway, the situation is a bit better than it was in 2014, and I hope that it will only develop for the better. Okay,
and speaking on the evolution since 2014, how has the perception of Ukraine abroad? How have these new media outlets helped shape the idea of Ukraine in the Western mindset?
Well, I think that for the majority of the population that don't really follow Ukrainian events, Euromaidan was, first of all, a way to get Ukraine on the map. Because from Euromaidan on, we know that such a country, Ukraine, exists, and it has protests and etc. And right now, I think that mostly the coverage of Ukraine is shaped by the war that's going on in the East, and that's natural because it's the main thing that we have going on. But of course, it shapes the image of Ukraine as a country which is at war, which is reflected in like, for instance, travel advice to not visit Kiev because it's a city ravaged by war. So basically, I think, I mean, for people living far away, Ukraine is a country at war. And unfortunately, there's no way to stop that right now. But in other ways, I think we have had a lot of good quality coverage of Ukraine and the Ukrainian conflict in Western media from that time.
So you spoke on the Western perception that Ukraine is a country at war. What do you think are the biggest driving factors towards that? Do you think it's mostly the Russian influence in the media, or do you think that there's a misconception in Western media of the situation?
No, I think it's just natural that foreign reporters are reporting on the conflict as it's the most prominent thing happening in Ukraine. And of course, if there were more positive things that they could cover, the coverage would shift. But unfortunately, we don't provide enough of those positive events to be covered. So we need more victories like Jamala's victory in Eurovision and other good news that would be a meaningful story for the West. And of course, we have to keep in mind that this is a country far away with perceptions and biases that people don't know much about. And it's very hard breaking through this bias curtain to get news across from us.
Looking long term, you said that in the immediate future, there's no real way to shatter the perception that Ukraine's a country at war. Looking long term, what are the ways to get Ukraine on the map, so to speak, again? In a positive light, not just Eurovision victories, but more broadly.
Of course, like astonishing victories will help us a lot in this, but other than that, I think there is no other way than just to reform the country, to build up our own media outlets, to reach out to Western media outlets. It's all an ongoing process, and I just hope that Ukraine's enthusiasm will not sap out to reach out to tell our story.
And speaking on new media outlets, there was a recent poll by Detector Media that said that only 1.3% of Ukrainians trust Russian television on the conflict, on reporting on the conflict in Donbass. Obviously, the Ukrainian media held up that figure as a victory. Do you think that's a victory, and do you think that that kind of success could be repeated in the West?
Well, on one hand, of course, it is a victory that Ukrainians don't trust Russian television, which is known to be just a channel for propaganda. But on the other hand, the other figures of that report show that 1/3 of the population in Donbass trust neither the Ukrainian media nor the Russian media. That means that there is a general disillusionment in media and hopelessness to establish the truth through contemporary media. Actually, the poll shows that they trust more their friends and colleagues and people that they know to get news about what's happening around them. And of course, this is one of Russia's propaganda tactics also to get people disenfranchised with establishing the truth. There is no truth because it's so conflicting. So. So I would say that at best this is a dubious victory.
Well, one Russian tactic in, as you said, disenfranchising the truth has been to create puppet accounts online. And, for example, last week, the New York Times reported that in the Dutch referendum, there was a team of Russians posing as Ukrainians online to sway and influence that the result of the referendum. Do you think this is a tactic? Is this a tactic you saw in 2014, 2013 during the Euromaidan movement, or has it been something that's popped up, that's evolved in the new media landscape?
Well, this tactic is a very common tactic of Russia's hybrid war, and of course we saw it during Euromaidan, namely in the anti-Maidan camp, which had people shuttled in from all over Ukraine and just kept there and to create an illusion of opposition to the Euromaidan movement. So of course this is a very vivid example of how this was used on 3 years ago, but of course this is replicated in many instances in Ukraine to create this illusion of opposition to basically Ukraine's course, pro-Western course. And we can see this in orchestrated protests near the American embassy, which basically like the main message is Yankees go home. Or we can see this also in the recent campaign that was analyzed by Detector Media, the same organization that released the poll, about creating this image of proletariat supporting closer economic ties with Russia, where basically it was fabricated from the beginning to the very end, but ended up in a concerted media effort to show that these fabrics and production facilities are signing letters that Mr. Poroshenko restore economic ties with Russia. And I mean, so basically like fabricating public support on the ground is a very well-known tactic of Russia's hybrid war.
So, and this fabricated support that you've spoke on, which has had a history in Ukraine, now it's reaching West. Now the West is dealing with fake news, fake social media. What advice, as a Ukrainian who's had to battle this kind of issue, would you give to Westerners who are experiencing this really for the first time?
Well, I guess with anything that happens, ask the question, who benefits from it? Who really benefits from the EU falling up into separate countries? Is Russia to benefit here, or is the EU to benefit here? Because Russian propaganda in Western countries, it has smaller possibility to infiltrate on stage like this non-existent support for anti-EU policies, but it rides along existing anti-EU sentiments, exacerbates them, and makes them worse. So I think the best advice would be with any information coming out, especially if it's incendiary, especially if it's very outrageous, check the sources, check that whether the site is a verified source. Check whether it makes sense logically. I mean, just fact-checking and understanding that there is a war going on will really help in the situation.
Okay, maybe a silly question, but has your perception on how to win this battle against fake news, fake media, fake social media, has your outlook on how to win it changed at all since 2014?
How to win it? I guess I mean, in 2014, we didn't really know that there's this battle going on. I mean, we just gradually started understanding after Euromaidan, after Crimea and Donbass. And I guess I think we're moving in the right direction, but there needs to be more. There needs to be more awareness raising of what's going on, because it's impossible to debunk every false claim. They churn it out as very fast, and once it's out there, then the debunking comes a couple of days later, and not as many people see it. So I think we just need to make people more and more aware of information warfare and its goals, and basically to call a spade a spade. It's Russia waging an information war against the West.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was wonderful to have you. We'd be happy to have you again. For UATV, I'm Chris Fratwood. Thank you for joining us.